this evening. Before I jump into a few things I have, I asked to come in tonight are the three project managers for the three primary projects we have for 2023. Those being the Bushman Road Design and Engineering, the City Hall Facility Assessment, and the Sewer Expansion Study. Really the purpose from tonight is I just wanted them to give the opportunity to come before the council, face to names, introduce themselves, and give the council a bit of an overview of kind of how that projects proceed, what they can expect, and allow the council to ask them any questions. So first of all, we have joining virtually tonight is Mr. Paul Sandy. He is an engineer with WSB and is the project manager for the Bushman Road and Design Project. So with that, Paul, I'm handing it over to you.
Thanks, David. Just making sure you guys can hear me loud and clear.
We can hear you just fine, Paul.
Excellent. Well, I appreciate David giving me the opportunity to do this tonight from home. The weather obviously being a factor in traveling down to Breezy Point tonight. I live south of Brainerd. So a little bit about myself. Again, David kind of explained who I am. I'm Paul Sandy. I am a senior project manager with WSB. We responded to a request for proposals that the city let out back in October for the design and construction services for Bushman Road and the intersection of Ranchette Drive. Through our proposal and our scope of services that we outlined in that proposal, the city put together a team to review project proposals and ended up selecting and further entering into a contract with my firm to do the design services for Bushman Road. So we really broke our scope of services and fee down into three separate phases. The first phase of the project is what we are under contract for right now. These phases are laid out in a way that the city council can really, at the end of each phase, this phase one being preliminary design, engineering, investigations, can take a step back and make sure the project, was within their budget, is what they want to move forward with into final design, and further, if phase two gets done, if that final design and cost estimate that is being prepared by WSB is meeting the city's goals and financial finances for moving into construction. So the three phases, like I said, preliminary design is phase one, phase two is our final design, right-of-way acquisition, and phase three is that construction administration and construction services. Getting into kind of phase one, we have 9 separate tasks in that phase, and what this really is gathering all the existing data that we have on the Bushman Road corridor and putting together a preliminary design. And what that is an alignment that meets certain traffic speed, an alignment that has good sight distance. Bushman Road has a lot of evident safety issues with sight distances, blind driveways, higher speeds, and a lot of, frankly, what I would say would be close calls with, vehicles traveling or pedestrians traveling that corridor. So this first phase, these 9 tasks, they were outlined in the RFP. We've responded to that RFP and put in hours and what we think our time and effort would be to complete that task or that phase for the city. So task 1, existing data collection. Task 2 is a topographic survey where we go out with GPS and survey equipment and survey the corridor. Task 3 is our existing right-of-way determination. So the Bushman Road corridor does have right-of-way in certain spots, and it differs because of different platting that's taken place over the years. What that existing right-of-way determination does is making sure that we know exactly where the city has rights to construct the roadway and where private property rights begin. So we know going into an easement acquisition process, if the city moves forward, where we would need to acquire property if the roadway needs to more or less go on to private property. Phase 4 is environmental reconnaissance and wetland delineation. There was a previous study done by Bolton and Mink in 2022 that did the wetland delineation for this Bushman Road corridor. What this task really is submitting that to the local government unit and the county to get a wetland concurrence notice of decision. Basically that they're agreeing with where the wetland boundaries are on the project. Task 5 is a geotechnical exploration. Again, with the Bolton and Mink study, there was a certain amount of geotechnical work that was done. This really will use that data and supplement it with more soil borings. What this does is it provides underlying soil conditions. It looks at groundwater. It looks at our geotechnical engineers will prepare a recommendation on pavement section and typical section to us to use in our design. So that's what that is. Then we really get into that preferred geometric layout. So our design staff will go through and look at what the best geometric layout is for the corridor, provide a couple of layout options to the city council to consider that meet the certain design speed and criteria that is set forth in that local design standard. We have some utility coordination that will probably take place in this first phase. We do have that scoped out as a preliminary utility meeting. There are some big utilities in this corridor, overhead power. There's some fiber lines and things like that that we'll need to coordinate with early on to ensure they know what where the city's kind of moving forward on the scope of work, what is kind of happening with the roadway, is the roadway shifting? Are they going to be in conflict with any proposed improvements? And we can start that coordination early so they can get relocated in time. One of the big tasks for this one is public involvement. I think we have 3 public meetings scheduled for this first phase, along with a lot of city council meetings that we'll be at here. And so we have public engagement staff that will be providing poster boards and things like that. We'll be having one-on-one meetings with residents that might be impacted by the project. Really making sure that the preferred alternative that is selected is a publicly approved selection, and that residents along the corridor within the community are aware of what's happening or what the council's direction kind of is. Final task, once we get kind of all that put together, is preparing a final cost estimate so that the council can make an informed decision on whether to move forward into phase 2, which would be final design, which is taking that preliminary layout, all these investigations that we've done, and moving forward into final design, and having a set of bid documents that we can go out to contractors and construct the project. So that is our phase 1 scope of services. That's what we're under contract for with the city right now. Again, I'm the lead point of contact for this project, and I welcome council members. The mayor and I and David had a discussion about this project here a couple of weeks ago. I welcome any questions from you guys now, or David can give you my contact information if you have any further questions about the project, who I am, what our firm is, and how we intend to, help the city through this process. And so I guess with that, David, I'll turn it back, or Madam Mayor, I'll turn it back to you and answer any questions that you guys may have.
Yeah, thank you so much for presenting tonight, and thank you for waiting 2 hours. Yeah, I really wanted you guys to be able to ask some questions too. I know 3 of us being new up here, and I know you had some questions and you had some questions, so do you guys have any specifically about the phases, how much we're involved, input?
Yeah, I would just echo what the mayor has said. Appreciate Paul the time tonight. I think part of what we were looking for is to just get a better understanding of what the prior city council had committed to, and it's good for me to hear that at this point it includes just the phase 1 work activities. Naturally curious, you had mentioned, I believe, 3 opportunities for public input and comment. Any tentative timeline on that, and beyond the timeline, thoughts specifically on how the community is going to be allowed that opportunity? Is that going to resemble a public hearing at a council meeting? Are those going to be opportunities outside of a council meeting? Kind of what's your thoughts on how it's going to be approached?
Yes, I appreciate that question. There's a phase 1 schedule that's in our proposal, and that includes that task 8 that I was talking about under public engagement. How this kind of will work, or what we've scoped out, is we have a project kickoff meeting, and that's going to be like beginning of April. So this project will start in January. I'll start gathering existing data, going through that, writing a memo to city staff on what reports have been done, what studies have been done on the corridor, and how we can utilize that data and input that into our preliminary design. But that kickoff meeting is going to be really important for the project in general. There's 4 city council meetings in there, so the intent was to go to the May, June, July, and August city council meetings. That's when a lot of this preliminary work is going to be done. We're in freeze conditions right now, so topographic survey is a lot more difficult. You have like soil borings and things like that become more difficult here in the winter months. So we're not really proposing to really hit the ground running until that April timeframe. And that's why that kickoff meeting is kind of scheduled at that time. So obviously the 4 city council meetings for any scheduled public input that, we would want to take at those times, between discussions with Mr. Chansky and the mayor or council members, that if you guys want to have specific public hearings during those meetings about things that have been talked about on the project or whatever that looks like, there is an opportunity in this first phase for a public open house. And that was going to be sometime in mid-July, where we will present through all these discussions what the council kind of approved preliminary layout is, and take feedback from the public. And that feedback that we solicit and get at that meeting, at that public open house, will help to inform that final preliminary design. And then we can create that cost estimate based on, if there's tweaks that have to be made right after that public meeting and before the next city council meeting, we can certainly do that and make sure that it's a publicly accepted layout. It's something that the council is comfortable with. The cost estimate is within the range of what you guys were thinking for construction on this project, and just making sure that everyone's on the same page. So, project kickoff for city council and a public open house. In this first phase, there are more opportunities for public engagement when we get into final design also.
I don't know if this is the time and place to share the thoughts that I have on this project and the work that's being done, but I'm going to make some comments or share some thoughts, because in part I believe in transparency, and I don't believe in holding on to otherwise hidden agendas. I wholeheartedly agree that Bushman Road is riddled with any number of safety concerns. I think that's a given. My support going forward on continuing to work on this project is likely not going to be there. And in large part because I don't think that the city should be undertaking a whole-scale improvement to a road like Bushman unless and until we've got other community partners on board. I'm having a hard time thinking about and reconciling in my head the city going lock, stock, and barrel forward with a corridor, as we know Bushman to be, and having what at the end of the day? Having a vastly improved road that serves who? Again, maybe it's too early on in the process to be sharing thoughts and making comments in that way, but it's coming from a place of a belief in transparency and being someone who wants to fully disclose where I'm at, the position that I'm sitting in, why I believe people voted me into this position. I've heard a lot of concern from residents in the community on the city of Breezy Point going at this alone. And I just got to say, I mean, I really need to restate the fact that I agree with that. In my mind, any improvement to Bushman makes much more sense to the extent we get Pequot Lakes involved, we get Ideal Township involved, and we look at this as a collective full-length corridor improvement, as Bushman really is. So.
I can speak a little bit on that behalf, Mr. Scott. I did serve on the cooperative road project that we worked with Ideal, Jenkins, and Pequot, and we were looking at potentially going to a county road standard. Our goal was to potentially turn it over to the county to alleviate the stress and the cost burden from maintenance on future costs. However, during public engagements, we heard loud and clear that a county road standard was not the foreseen what the community wants. So we've drastically reduced that to being up to essentially local standards. We had a lot of public input, and that's kind of the way we went. This is just the city portion of the Bushman Road that we are looking at maintaining, essentially, is what we're doing. It's a failing road, so it needs to be improved upon. Again, not to the extent that we originally sought. That was the cooperative road project that went on for over a year and a half, I believe. So that was something that we drastically tried doing. There's a section of road that is joined with Ideal, and I believe we've expressed interest that we're going to be going forward, and they want to be partake with that to make sure that the joint portion of the road that Bushman is co-owned by both of entities they want to partake in. But no, this has been something that's been ongoing for quite some time. We've had a lot of public input. We've drastically downsized it. Again, we had ideas of upgrading to county standards with the concept that we can turn it over for county to maintain for all the future and remove that cost burden from all the cities. But that was a high ticket value priced item. And at the time, the community and essentially the council decided not to go forward with that. We would love to see the continuation of the corridor. I'm going to draw a blank on the road that heads north from Bushman and then west. We'd love to see that all be improved, but that's up to the separate entities of Pequot Lakes and Ideal and Jenkins. So just a little input from my...
Yeah, no, and I appreciate that. And yeah, I mean, maybe I have a slightly different perspective and come from a different place at it, being in the transportation industry myself. I just know that the minute you touch, by way of improvement, to a road like Bushman, it's forever going to change the landscape of that area. And I, frankly, am not sure that our community members, especially the folks that live along that corridor, are looking for that level of improvement. Again, notwithstanding the safety concerns, I think we're all on board with the fact that those have to be addressed. I just think ultimately it's going to come down to really what we're talking about and looking at doing.
And I could, from what I heard, I think you said that you think something should be done with Bushman, correct? Or should we leave it as is?
Well, in terms of dealing with the safety and sightline concerns, absolutely. I don't know that it warrants a wholesale reconstruction. At least the folks that I've talked to certainly don't believe that that's what's needed.
And I think that might be where some miscommunication might be coming from, is because it was going to be total reconstruction if we went to county standards. But again, this is going up to essentially local standards. But maybe, Minister Chance, am I misspeaking on anything at this point?
This is a total reconstruction.
Oh, that's
And I think part of that too is, and Mr. Sandy, again, further discussion can go into depth of why they're going to propose what they're going to propose. And part of that, I think, is a misunderstanding as to how Bushman is currently constructed. And the fact is, we would never construct Bushman as it is currently constructed today. I wouldn't propose it ever. It is not any standard road, and that's part of the problem as to where Bushman is. And I think also there's a misunderstanding, again, just education of how much time Bushman is in the actual condition, decent condition it is in, because of the time the city has spent in maintaining it. Our Public Works team spends I would say many hours and thousands of dollars every year patching that road and kind of band-aiding and keeping that road alive. I think that's ultimately also why the council decided eventually to go down that path, was how long are we going to keep nursing this road along, and at what point, the previous councils for long time have just kind of taken that approach of we're just going to keep band-aiding this road. And I think the previous council kind of finally came to the conclusion of, okay, enough band-aids, we've had enough band-aids, and it's now time to actually look at curing this road and fixing this road. So that's, I think, also where the council came from, was it's time to give this road a long-term fix.
And the nice thing is too, I mean, we have full control, and that's really what he's saying, right? So if phase one doesn't come out the way that the council votes, we can stop it at any time. So this is not something that we've committed to long-term. I mean, this is something that we get to be a part of the process from day one. And so at least that should give everyone at least some, like breathing room to say, okay, guess what, we get to be a part of the process, we get to look at it, we could say no at any time, but at least let's go through the process of seeing, what is gonna come out on the other side, and if we want that, then great, we vote, we keep going, and if we don't, then we stop. So at least continue the process, and we'll just move forward from there.
Yeah, and I understand that, and certainly in agreement with, the road being looked at and evaluated in terms of what's suggested from an engineering standpoint by way of improvements to be made, but I'm pretty confident in saying that, if it comes to a total reconstruction of that road, I will not be in favor on board with that. So, I'd rather say that now as opposed to 3 months from now and potentially being questioned as to why didn't you share those views or come out with that position earlier on?
All right. Anyone else have anything else they want to add?
I guess I proceed with phase one. We're in control. I think everybody's in agreement. Something should be done. But to what degree and cost-wise, and also local standards, we proceed with phase one.
Well, again, we want to thank you so much for staying up late with us. I know it's probably past your bedtime, but
I'm used to it. As David may have told some of you, we worked together over at the city of Brainerd for many years, and there was a many nights where we were up past 10 o'clock doing this kind of thing. So I appreciate the opportunity to work with you guys. And as I said, David.
Oh, Paul, you just muted yourself.
You can share information with the council about my contact information. Any questions you guys have offline, certainly ask them. We're here to help you guys and help you guys make the right decision moving forward on what you think is best for Bushman. We'll give you technical advice and safety considerations, but all in all, we're here to serve the city. So that's what our main duty is here. So.
all right. Thank you so much. Have a good night.
Thank you.
All right, Lindsay from.
So next up we have Lindsay Creams with Widseth. She's the project manager for the City Hall Facility Assessment, and she'll just kind of walk through that project, which I think is a little bit of a shorter project, right, Lindsay?
It is. Good evening, Madam Mayor and council members. It's a pleasure to be here with you tonight. My name is Lindsay Krenz. I'm an interior designer with Widseth, along with my coworker, Joe DeBell, who's city engineer for the city. It's a pleasure to be back in front of you all. Some of you might recognize me for our work with the community center feasibility study last year. And as a part of that study, we started looking at City Hall, knowing that the property here is in question, potentially for development in the future, and what does that mean for the City Hall? So Administrator Chansky asked us at Widseth to put together a proposal for assessing the existing facility and then also a long-range plan for the City Hall facility. So when we start a facility assessment, we look at several main categories at the facility. So we're looking at the health, safety, and welfare of the facility and serving the occupants and the city staff, structural integrity of the building, deferred maintenance, and then also the long-range planning of that facility. So our process is a simple three-step process. So first, we'll start out by assessing the facility, assessing the facility and conducting a report. So we'll bring a team of architects and engineers to the facility, do a thorough walkthrough investigation, assessing things as such as access control and security, mechanical systems and indoor air quality, ADA accessibility, deferred maintenance, items like that. Once that report is put together, we'll then work into our step number 2, which is the City Hall and Community Center long-range planning. So what we'll do is we'll take a look at this existing facility. Once we'll understand what type of capital would be needed for this facility for improvements, for deferred maintenance costs, and how we kind of categorize there as a high category need, a medium category need, and then a low. So that high is with from 0 to 5 years, things that should be taken a look at immediately. That 5 to 10 years is kind of that medium range, things that you should start to plan for now. And then kind of in the future radar, that 10 to 20 years, things that should be coming on your deferred maintenance schedule. We'll also take a look at future improvements, potentially a new facility, and then also how does that play into a community center development into the future. So understanding the property, what opportunities and constraints that might be here. Again, this is just kind of this big picture planning exercise, just to show you different ideas and concepts that can work within this existing facility and the site it sits on. And then lastly, we'll pull together the assessment and long-range planning deliverable and present that back to the council for review. Any questions on that process?
When are we expecting that?
So we typically have about a 4-month process. So January, we've already kind of started this process. We had an initial kickoff with Administrator Chansky. Our next step will be an on-site review with our team of architects and engineers. February, we'll be really pulling that data together, and then we'll shoot for April of 23 for a final report and presentation to you all.
Perfect.
I'm not sure if I heard you right, so just looking for some clarification. The work you're doing in looking at City Hall also has attached to it, it sounds like, looking at the community center concept as well?
Potentially. So what we'll do is we'll talk about the potential of a building addition in the future, what that would look like if a new building was built adjacent to this facility. The community center facility study identified or studied multiple locations for a potential community center around Breezy Point. Unanimously, it was decided that, you know, next to City Hall, with all of the amenities that are offered here, the location within the community itself, this is really an ideal location for a future community center. So, not saying that one it will be built tomorrow, but many, many years down the future, what would that potentially look like? And let's plan for that ahead, kind of this master planning approach. So a little bit of that will be wrapped up into this.
Just asking, because I guess I wasn't clear on exactly the scope of the work being done, and I'm quite sure that others in the community lack that clarification too. Whatever it's worth, my impression was the action the council took in December was to look at City Hall, to assess this building, and to report on needs, ideas of modifications, future expansion, what have you. So, a little interesting in my view that it also includes continuing to look at community center.
That's a really good question. So taking into consideration City Hall, again, we haven't really done any analysis on the facility at this point. But let's just say in a world that this facility is no longer viable and a new facility would need to be built, what does that look like, and how would that potentially support some community functions such as a community center? We don't really know what that looks like yet, but that's hopefully what this study will bring forth, is the assessment of this facility. You know, are remodeling, modifications to this existing facility in the works? Is a new facility feasible, and what would that look like for future expansion?
Madam Mayor, if I can make a
Yeah, go
clarification statement as well. So to Councilmember Scott's question, what the action the council took in December was to accept Woodseth's proposal, which included that element. So again, the main purpose of the proposal, correct, is looking at City Hall. That is really the crux of this, is all looking at City Hall. And that is the primary element, as Lindsay said, is they're gonna give us a document that says, here is all the things that we've identified with this current facility, and if you want to maintain this facility moving forward, here are all the things that we have identified as subpar that need to be addressed. Taking code, building code, ADA, all of that, all of those things. The other elements is looking at, okay, there are other things that we have identified that may be issues with this building beyond structural, safety, other things. Like the fact that we have no office, we are maxed out on office space. What is the future, the long-range planning of this building as we continue to grow as a community, as we continue to have future staff needs look like? Could that be remodeling this building? Could that be looking at adopting or building a new building? And that's where that third piece of just, we've had this discussion about a community center. It would be probably most financially feasible to do some kind of joint building. What could a joint building look like in providing those options to the council? Again, this is the study is to give the council information, concepts of here what you could do, dollars to those concepts, so then you have the information on what you want to do proceeding to move forward with this building. Do you just want to fix up what needs to be fixed up and call it a day? Do you want to look at adding space? Is it a new building? What are those things? And you have the information to make that decision.
And I will add to that too. So with that being said, when you look at even the costs of combining a community center, you can then look at it and say, okay, we can't do that, or we're not going to do that because the cost would be too much to the taxpayers. So it is giving us a range, not saying that we're going to do it. It's saying if this were an option, this is what it would cost. Because there are residents that have expressed wanting one, but if it's going to cost, the taxpayers X amount of dollars, we just need to know those numbers so that we can say, here's how we're going to move forward. That's essentially what this, again, it's similar to the WSB. It's just giving us all the numbers so that we can make the best possible choices for the city. But if we never know those numbers, then people will ask, what if? And we don't want people to ask, what if? We want people to really get and have a good understanding of what we're choosing to do. Any other questions? Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We appreciate it. Yep.
And then last but not least, Mr. Joe Dubel will be doing the sewer expansion one. While Joe's coming up, I just wanted to add something very quickly on all three of these projects so that the council has some further information, how we've kind of decided to divvy this up staff-wise. Assistant Administrator Ike, kind of taking the lead from the staff's perspective on the Bushman Road. Obviously, he'll be working with Public Works Supervisor Joe Zierden, as well as myself. But he's going to kind of be the main contact for that one. City Hall, I've taken on as the main contact for that. And then obviously Joe will be working closely with Joe on the sewer expansion things as well. And again, obviously council will be involved in all of these projects. Joe Zierden, Public Works Supervisors, kind of gave him the night off tonight as they'll be starting bright and early at 4 o'clock tomorrow morning plowing. So, Joe.
My name is Joe DeBell. I'm your city engineer. I haven't met three of you, and I've seen you a lot in the meetings. Brad, I haven't seen you yet, and you I haven't seen either, Madam Mayor. So if there's anything I can ask or do for you, just give me a call.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, that's my contact. I'm going to be doing the study for the sewer expansion. Behind David right there is your sewer map, what you have right now in the city, and the city is expanding. So we're going to look at how much expansion would happen, could possibly happen in full build out. And right now your facilities at about, I think if Joe was here, he'd be able to pin it down better. I think it's between 80 to 85%. When you hit that, when you start reaching that, getting close to that capacity for it, then it's time to look at it. And again, just like everything else, we're looking at something that takes 4 or 5 years, because you do the study and then you start finding out what you need to have, and then you go from there and try to find the financing for it. So starting that early is kind of, and as you creep up, hopefully we're not going to creep into where there's a moratorium we have to put on any kind of building, because your sanitary sewer can't handle it. So it'll be a matter of either, you have 4 ponds now, I think some of them need maybe a little work to them. irrigation wise, and the irrigation system, aeration, I should say, and the irrigation system could be expanded too. You have the property for it right now. I think it's 80 acres sitting out there. So I'm going to look at that, how that would work with your expansion and what the cost would be and lay that out. So a little simpler than doing this road, I guess, and having a bunch of meetings because nobody wants to talk about what we're doing with that stuff. Just as long as it goes away, everyone's happy.
I do have a question because I have not seen anything yet, so maybe you guys have already addressed this. So with the sewer expansion, if it expands to homes that are already on a septic, then will we be requiring them to hook up to a sewer? Is that part of the study?
Yeah, so that's really all of council policy.
Okay.
And again, as Joe said, you know, this study is, where do you see it? You know, again, there's that point of, we know we're gonna have to do some expansion of the current plant in the
Yep.
direction we're going with just the system we have today. But if you also see it expanding in the future, the actual system, the lines, how do you see that? And then once you actually decide to actually do that, that's when I think kind of, you know, okay, we're going to expand the sewer in this area. That's when you would have the policy discussion of, are we making people hook up right away? Are we giving them a certain amount of time to hook up? All that.
Okay. Have you been involved in any other city sewer expansions?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, I just finished a study in Nisswa. I'm the city engineer for Nisswa too. So probably about the same thing. They have an irrigation system with their
Right.
facility.
Right.
We just expanded the pond
Okay.
and their irrigation system for their growth. My mind just was shut. I'm on vacation. An hour and a half ago, I was sitting out on Lake Edwards fishing, so
Oh,
put my boots on and came in here.
well, we appreciate you coming.
No, I knew I was coming, and I knew I was taking vacation, but I just was told I'd still come up. So I'm not very prepared. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay, that's
But,
okay.
you know, when you do your expansion too, you're going to look at things like we have done some your road grade, just study on your roads. So as maybe your road expands in some areas, we'll look at, is it the right time to expand your sanitary there? Do it in places where your growth is going. Say Bushman Road, say we need a trunk main down that. You know, looking at what I'm doing now, you might want to take some of that information and incorporate it into there if that expansion, because really there isn't any sewer north of Bushman Road, very little of it, but it has the capability of expanding, so. And that all comes slow, it's not
Not fast.
Michael, you got anything for me?
Nothing.
I'll be a first.
So you are looking at if sanitary sewer was provided to all property in the city? What that would involve?
Well, I'm gonna look at where it's logical to go. You know, some places might not be, you know, to where you can even get to them. And others are pretty obvious that might be an expansion. You got certain areas that maybe haven't even developed yet that'll start developing, and look at those so that you got that. It's having the capacity for it is what you really want to do. Make sure that when or even if maybe the expansion right now is half of what you would do for later, you know, and because I don't know, the growth, maybe it'll go up a little bit, but you're getting so close to your capacity on your facility that you have right now that you just need to look at it because you do have room for growth in your city.
So, Madam Mayor, if there's other thing, again, as Joe kind of referred to, the sewer, there's so many things that go hand in hand with this, with the sanitary sewer of, you know, there's the streets component of, you know, more often than not, it's, you know, places you put sewer is either underneath your road or next to your road. So when you're looking at, you know, redoing a road,
Right.
that's a good time to look at it.
Right.
But there's also, you know, we just had this conversation earlier about your land use ordinances. Sanitary sewer plays a role in that too, because when a property has access to a sewer to it, it affects the development or how that property can develop differently than if it had to be on a septic tank.
Right.
So that plays a role in all these things kind of, they're separate little things here, there, and there, but all together they come together and help the city determine how how we're going to grow in the future, how we want to grow in the future, and all that.
Perfect. Anything else you guys have for him?
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Nice to meet you.
Get back to fishing,
go.
all right?
Yeah.
So, Madam Mayor, just a few other things I just want to hit really quickly before we adjourn this evening, and I'll go quickly. Just an update again, as I did previously mentioned, obviously there's some snow outside. Our Public Works team, they will be out bright and early at 4 a.m. plowing. I think it'll be a lot easier on them tomorrow than it was a couple weeks ago. We got some light fluffies, and hopefully we won't have so many trees down in the middle of the road. Plowing, blocking their way, and damaging our equipment. Quick update on our website project, again, that we've started going on, looking at updating or replacing our website. Again, for the new council members who may not have heard the previous discussions on this, we found out rather shockingly a couple months ago, when Assistant Administrator Ike went to go look at how are some ways we can update our current website, and was told you can't. That was a little shocking when we found out our website is legacied and there really isn't much we can do, and at some point Kitalis might just hit delete on it. So we did some reviewing, looked at different options for that. The council ultimately decided to selected a company called Civic Plus. They're kind of the premier governmental entity website company to do that, and they are in the process of that. So we're actively working on that. Daniel's, again, the front man for that. And we're hoping to have kind of a draft of what that website looks like before the city council in March. Maybe it's something we'll go through over the retreat, kind of give you an overview. By then, we should have pretty much roughly a unpublished but working website that we can work through with you, and you can provide us any input on that website as you would like. We've kind of talked about short-term rentals. The only thing I'll add on that is that the county board today at their first meeting of the year did adopt their new short-term rental ordinance under their land use authority and repealed their short-term rental ordinance under their public health authority. So once that ordinance is published and officially goes into effect, the Crow Wing County will no longer license or enforce any short-term rentals in the city of Breezy Point. And then the last thing I just have is just a quick update. There will be no planning commission meeting this month. Normally they meet on the second Tuesday of the month. There really isn't anything. We have no items or applications for the planning commission to consider, but we are working on scheduling right now, and I've sent something out to you as also the planning commission. At the end of the month, we're looking right now the 24th, 25th, or 26th of January to bring in a trainer to do some planning and zoning training for the commission, any council members that would like to attend. And I think we're also intending to invite anyone from the local communities as well if they want to come and participate. Any of the planning commissioners, councilors, council members, planning staff from other communities that want to come in and participate in that training as well. So you should also have that in your inbox. Just looking for whether or not one of those 3 dates works for you, so we can get that scheduled as soon as possible. With that, that's all I have for this evening, Madam Mayor.
Motion to adjourn. Councilman Jensen, motion. Councilman Scott, second. Any discussion? All in favor?
All right.
All opposed? Or adjourned?